The Vizier's Son. A nomad proverb says that in order to enjoy tea properly, one needs three things: time, embers, and friends. And before a guest leaves, he should drink at least 3 cups of tea. The first cup, one says, is as bitter as life. The second cup is as sweet as love. And the third cup is as light as death. Dear listeners, you might be aware that this is from a time and place where you didn't change the tea leaves between cups, so this also explains the change in flavor. And side knowledge is that to this day, if you make proper green tea in Japan, you make 2 runs with the same set of leaves. Everything else would be a waste. But back to the story. In ancient times, there lived a vizier who was not only a consultant to his sultan, but also a good friend. When the old sultan died after a grave disease, his son, then still a boy, was put onto the throne. The vizier taught him everything that he knew and stood at his side like a father. The vizier's marriage was without a child, so this also contributed to his affection for the new sultan. Once a week, during the evening hours, as during the times when the old sultan was still alive, the vizier had this ritual with the sultan's son: to play chess, drink tea, and to tell tales. And after that, as custom especially popular in Arabia and nomad societies as usual, they also told and solved riddles. The vizier's wife had always wished for children, but the doctors and healers weren't able to help. So she continued to pray. Many years passed by. One morning, as the vizier's wife opened the door, she saw that someone had left a basket in front of it. She looked into the basket and saw that a small baby child was lying in there. She looked left and right, but no one was to be seen on the streets. So she took the baby inside and into her arms and ran into the bedroom to awaken her husband, shouting out loud, "God, listen to my prayers. See, husband, see what was put in front of our door." Slowly awakening, the vizier tried to calm his wife down. Well, perhaps this is the child of a poor family, struggling to feed their children, and they knew that we have this wish for children on ourselves, so perhaps they left it on the doorstep. Or it could be the child of a young woman who is in trouble, and she had to hide her kid. Anyways, let us wait for a time, and only when no one comes looking for the child, we can keep the baby and raise it as our own. Weeks and months passed, but nobody came for the child. So it happened that the young baby boy not only got the love of his adoptive parents, but also the best education money could buy. He visited the best schools in the country and was introduced into all the arts of his time. When he became a young man, his father took him to his weekly meetings with the Sultan, in order to introduce him into this ritual of playing chess, drinking tea, telling tales and riddles. At first, it became the duty of the young boy to prepare the tea. Then he was allowed to listen to the tales of wisdom. Later, he was also invited to join in and to give and solve traditional riddles, and even come up with his own ones. He was very gifted in this domain, and the young sultan took a great liking to him. But, dear listeners, nothing is of permanence in this world. So, one day, something inevitable happened. There was a big fight between father and son, and in a fit of rage, the vizier said to him, "Through your conduct, it becomes apparent that you are only a foundling. Perhaps you are the son of a farmer or even a tramp." These words were a slap in the face of the young man. Surprised, for a short while he stood there, petrified, and then he ran away. Already the Vizier deeply regretted his words, but it is like in the saying, words are like the bullets of a rifle. Once they leave the barrel, there's no taking them back. From that day onwards, the young man didn't stop insisting towards his mother, asking her day in, day out, if he really was a foundling. At one point, she told him the whole story. And she added, "My boy, you are not flesh from my flesh. You are not blood from my blood. You were not born from under my heart, but you have grown into it, and I love you like only a mother can love." But still, something was broken inside of him. He grew up believing that he was one of the gentry, son of the second most powerful man in the Sultanate, and the son of loving parents. But from that day onward, he developed a deep-seated hatred towards his father. During the evening meetings with the Sultan, whenever his father was not able to attend due to travels, he tried with all the cunning he could muster to sow seeds of malicious gossip and slander against his father. In tiny potions, a snarky remark here, some gossip there. Every time he tried to put some poison into the Sultan's soul, and he succeeded. When the young man felt that the time was ripe, he said to the Sultan, "My father tries to push you from the throne and put me onto it, but I am your servant. You need to act, and that quickly." To that the Sultan said, "What shall I do in order to get rid of him?" The boy answered, "My liege, give him a riddle to solve, and if he can't solve it, he has to pay with his life." But what kind of riddle? Your father, as you know it, is very cunning. At that moment, the water that they had put to boil for the tea started to whistle in the kettle. Ask my father what the water in the kettle speaks. And when it starts to whistle, what does it say? The Vizier's son told the Sultan his answer, which he liked. One other evening, when the Vizier was again at the Sultan with his son, he confronted him with the accusation of being an usurper, plotting for his dismissal. The Vizier understood immediately what was going on. He was a wise and intelligent man, and he had realized that the Sultan had estranged himself more and more recently from him. And he was also sure that the source of all of this was his own son. The only thing he did not have expected was how far his son would go. But he listened to the Sultan's words without speaking back. "Vizier," said the Sultan, "I will give you one chance to save your head. Solve my riddle within 3 days, and I will pardon you. If you don't solve it, so may Allah have mercy on your soul." At that moment the water in the kettle had started to boil. The kettle gave its usual whistling sound. It sounded sad and forlorn on that night. "Tell me, Vizier, what does the boiling water in this kettle say? You have 3 days to give me an answer." Without saying a word, the Vizier went back home. He thought long and hard, but he couldn't find a fitting answer for that particular riddle. Suddenly he had to think of an old friend who lived a day's ride away and who was well known for his sharp mind and dexterity with words. The next day he saddled his horse and rode off to his old friend's place. Late in the afternoon he arrived, but his friend wasn't there. Only his daughter was present and told him that her dad was on a journey and not to expect it back for days. She asked him to enter the house and gave him water to drink. Then she put a kettle of water onto the fire in order to make a tea. "Uncle, you look worried," she exclaimed. "Yes, worried I am, but I had hopes that your father would be able to help me." "Tell me about your worries," the girl suggested. "I am the daughter of a savant after all." So the Vizier told her the whole story, From his adoptive son, the fight they had, the intrigue his son started to turn the Sultan's favor against him, up to the riddle that he had to solve in order to save his life. "Uncle, tell me the riddle," his friend's daughter exclaimed. Exactly at that moment, the water in the kettle began to whistle. The Vizier had to smile bitterly and said, "If you can tell me what the water in this kettle says, then you will have helped me." The girls started to think and prepared the tea. They drank the first glass in deep silence. After the second glass, the girl jubilated. "I have it, uncle. I am sure there are multiple solutions for that riddle, but one that fits your story, that one I have." She told him her answer to the riddle, and the Vizier was very happy with it. After the third cup of tea, he returned back home, relieved. The next day, he made his way to the Sultan's palace and said, "My Sultan, before I give you my answer and the solution to the riddle, I have something to ask of you. I want that my son is present and that we drink tea together. Perhaps it will be the last time." Shortly thereafter, the three men were standing in the room, and the water was put to boil. The Vizier took his time. He paced through the room. It was very quiet. When the water started to boil and the kettle started to whistle, the Vizier said, "The water does not sing a happy song. It is rather a lament. The water sings, 'From the sky I fell as rain. For the earth I was a blessing. The branch that I nourished, it is by him that I am now devoured.'" After these words, the Sultan saw through it all. The wheel of blindness fell from his eyes, and the poisonous words of the Vizier's son lost their dark power over him. He realized that for months this boy had lied. "Betrayer of your own father!" he exclaimed, full of scorn. "For your deed there is only one fitting punishment, death. But I will leave it to your father to judge you. No more time I will lose with you." Furious and deeply disappointed, the Sultan left the room. The father, though, spoke with a sad voice. "My son, Allah is your judge now. But you should do one thing. Leave this land. Take a horse and as much gold as you need, but leave." And so the Vizier's son was banned, and from that day strayed with his horse through all the lands, forlorn and lost. This is an excerpt from the book The Storyteller of Algiers, Stories from the Maghreb and Elsewhere, told and published by erzaehler.aceval in 2018. English audio version by erzaehler, published with authorization and explicit encouragement of the author, illustrations and title image by Bendix Bauer. Currently, the book is only available in German. If you are an editor or interested in publishing an English version of the book, please contact the author's son, erzaehler, under hakim@aceval.net. To order an autographed and dedicated copy of the book, please contact the author directly. You will find his email address under www.aceval.net or via his Facebook page.